Hello everyone and welcome back to the Sports Porch. I hope that you are all doing well and welcome to upload number 2 today, a daily upload times 2 because I missed Sunday. So keeping right on track here, we have at number 25 the New York Giants. If you guys are enjoying this series where I break down each team, go at their strengths, their weaknesses, some storylines for the season, as well as giving some key players for fantasy and a schedule overview. Make sure you guys drop a like on this video, as well as turning on post notifications and subscribing. With all that good stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and move on to the New York Football Giants this year. They are in my tier 4 of my power rankings. If you want to see that description, as always, it is in the description below, as well as any other tier. They have an outside chance of making the playoffs where really everything has to go right for them. Some teams have to do bad along the way, although in the NFC East, that's a little more likely than not. So a coaching analysis real quick. Dave Gettleman is in year 3. You could say technically year 4, but he took over in the middle of the season. Joe Judge at head coach, Jason Garrett at offensive coordinator, and Patrick Graham at defensive coordinator are all in year 2, with Thomas McGaughey at year 4 at special teams coordinator. Some strengths for this team: the offensive weapons have really been upgraded. They bring in Kenny Galladay, and I know he's had some troubles, some injuries nagging him at the beginning of camp. Hopefully they will work themselves out. He's a big upgrade at wide receiver 1. They also drafted Kadarius Toney in the first round, who's a really good gadget slot guy. They also have Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard, who are solid. Dante Pettis, I think, is a little underrated, who they bring in from San Fran. They also have John Ross there, who is kind of whatever. He's just there as a camp body, I think, for now. We'll see if he makes the roster. Evan Ingram is back, even though he does drop the ball a lot. You have him as your receiving tight end. And then Kyle Rudolph can really be your blocking tight end, your run stuffer type of tight end. And then Saquon Barkley I would consider to be coming back this year after tearing his ACL last year. So hopefully we get to see a lot more of him. I actually have him in one of my dynasty leagues. So please Saquon, let's stay healthy this year, buddy. So the next up, the secondary does look like it has a little bit of promise to it. James Bradbury, of course, is the number 1 there. They bring in Adoree Jackson, who I was a little surprised made it to the market, especially with, the Titans' corner situation isn't exactly perfect by any means, but he was a solid pickup for them. You've got at safety Jabril Peppers, Logan Ryan was a solid guy to bring in, Xavier McKinney as well. It's not the deepest secondary room in the league, but they do have some really solid guys there. And then, of course, the running back room, very good. You've got Saquon there, but you also have 2 guys in Devontae Booker and Corey Clement, former Wisconsin alum, who is, I think, slightly underrated. And I think they'll be good backups if Saquon goes out, which with Saquon, he might miss a couple games this year. It does seem like that's just kind of the way things go for him. They did lose Wayne Gallman, but I think that they'll be okay. So the weaknesses now. Kind of similar to what I said with the Panthers in the last video, where the weapons look really good, but the offensive line is still a big question mark. So Andrew Thomas did not look the best last year, especially with how great Mekhi Becton and Tristan Wirfs were. They lost Kevin Zeitler to the Ravens. I believe, is it the Ravens? I think so. They do lose Kevin Zeitler, though. Shane Lemieux, we'll see. Will Hernandez is still young, and Nate Solder on the right side isn't great, but he's not terrible. I don't know. We'll have to see with that. I'm not really big on this offensive line, and I think honestly it might be a bit of a detriment to the Giants' evaluation of Daniel Jones as a whole, considering that he doesn't have at least an average, I believe, offensive line. Another weakness you could point to is the linebacking group here isn't the best in the NFL, although, if we're being honest, linebackers don't really make or break your team anymore. Blake Martinez, I think, is just okay. Tate Crowder is all right, and then Lorenzo Carter as your Sam. These guys aren't terrible, but I don't think, like I said, linebackers really make or break your team as is. And then personally, I would consider the quarterback room to be a weakness. Daniel Jones, to me, we'll talk about him a little bit later more in depth, but as of right now, he is certainly a below average guy in the NFL. They also have Mike Glennon as backup, which if Jones is bad, he could see the field, but he's not going to be great. So there really isn't a whole lot here to get excited about besides Jones, but we'll get into him a little bit later in the video. I would like to see them maybe have brought in a undrafted free agent. Jamie Newman is still out there. I know he apparently looked really bad. We haven't heard many reports on it, but just with the way that he was cut really early on suggests he didn't look the best. So let's talk about Daniel Jones then. For the 3 storylines and question marks I have heading into the season, number 1 is, can Daniel Jones live up to this hype as the number 6 overall pick? I'm going to say no. And I honestly think a part of it's going to be the offensive line. We know Daniel Jones has some of the worst pocket presence of any quarterback in the NFL. He is notorious at this point for fumbling the ball. And certainly I don't think his offensive line is going to give him any help, even with a slightly better Andrew Thomas this year. I just don't think Daniel Jones has that it factor to him. I think he can do some solid stuff. I think he throws the ball pretty decently. Once he gets a clean pocket, I think he can be all right. But I don't think he's going to live up to that height that, especially New York this year, I think, has really set on him. And then can the offense perform well with a weak offensive line? You know, we've seen in the past Saquon Barkley not necessarily have the best years or get hurt. And then after that, Wayne Gallman comes in and is just kind of whatever for them. So I do think the offensive line here is going to be a big factor. It almost reminds me of the Cleveland Browns 2 years ago now. Although obviously the coaching staff with Freddie Kitchens there was pretty bad, you still did have a minus offensive line once they brought in Odell as part of that trade. And then the last question is, how good will this defense be this year? I think they have a really solid group of run stoppers. I do think they overpaid Leonard Williams, but whatever, he's here. You have Dexter Lawrence in the mix as well. They did draft Raymond Johnson III. Azeez Ojulari will come in as well. I think he was a great draft pick where they got him at. And as earlier I talked about the young secondary, but that's the key to all this. They still have a slightly younger team. And maybe last year was a bit of a fluke with the COVID year and whatever, right? So defenses can be very volatile in the NFL, so I am curious to see how good this defense will play for them, because I think this will also factor into how many games they can win this year, especially along with how volatile this offense could potentially be. So then some key players. Daniel Jones is number 1. I mean, make or break the year for him, honestly. If he does well, they could potentially win the NFC East. I do believe that if Daniel Jones plays well, this team has the potential to do that. Maybe even get a wild card spot if not, although that I think is a little bit of a big ask. I would say their best route to getting some playoff football this year is winning the East outright. Andrew Thomas is number 2. He's going to be Daniel Jones's blind spot, right? Playing that spot is a big thing in the NFL, especially when you had Mekhi Becton and Wirfs playing well, as I said last year. So he's really got to step up this year. It's not a make or break year for him, but after this year, if he looks kind of average or not the best, you do have to ask the question, how good can he be going forward? And then the last guy is Saquon. He's just got to stay healthy, I think. I think everything is there for him. He's one of the best prospects overall we've seen come into the NFL in the past couple of years, although he is at running back, so you can argue, how much of a plus he is. But I like Saquon, so hopefully he can stay healthy. And then the 3 best fantasy players for this team, Saquon Barkley is number 1. I mean, with Daniel Jones on the team especially, there's a really big potential that Saquon gets a lot of carries here. Kenny Golladay as well, being that number 1 alpha, especially being a deep threat, he could potentially get you a lot of points in a single week. And then I'm going to put Kadarius Toney at this last spot. I think he's a guy that, especially in Dynasty, you can take him in your rookie draft and really just see the upside there with Kadarius Toney. I think he has a chance to even break into and take Sterling Shepard's spot in the slot, but we'll have to see there. And then my Dynasty sleeper player is, not someone really who I've talked about in the past. I've talked about a lot of rookies, a lot of guys who are maybe just slept on a little bit, but I think this is kind of the opposite with Evan Ingram as my sleeper, where the tight end position as a whole, there's a lot of guys out there who are getting a lot more a lot more hype than Evan Ingram is. You got obviously the top three of Kelsey, Kittle, and Waller, but then you've also got Mark Andrews, Dallas Goedert's getting a lot of talk this year, and I think Evan Ingram has just kind of fallen below each of those guys. Even with Kyle Rudolph coming in, he's still going to be the receiving tight end. He's going to be out there on those passing downs, so I think he's someone you can take a little bit later in the draft, maybe towards the middle rounds, maybe a little higher than that, and I think you'll be satisfied throughout the whole season, especially if a guy like Kenny Golladay isn't able to come back and Daniel Jones needs a sure target to find. Evan Ingram could be that guy, although he does have the drop issues, so there is that to watch out for with him. So let's move on to the schedule overview. In terms of strength of schedule, they do have the 25th hardest schedule. That is the 7th easiest schedule in the NFL. Some key games for them: Week 3 versus Atlanta. Atlanta has a Monday game that is very winnable. Week 6 versus the Los Angeles Rams. I think they win this game. The Rams are coming off of a Monday game where they have to play at Seattle. So they have to, in a very short time, come to play the Giants. So I think that's a winnable game for them. And then Week 7 versus Carolina, another winnable one. And then any NFC East game, really, although I will highlight Week 15 versus Dallas as the one that seems the most winnable in my mind. I have this team overall going 5-12. The floor for them is 2 wins. I mean, let's face it, Daniel Jones could really look bad this year, and they might have to rely on Mike Glennon. And Kenny Golladay is already hurt. He could be out for a significant amount of time. Saquon could get hurt again. There's a lot of little things here that could go wrong in New York, but I also have their ceiling as 10 wins. They could look outstanding. Daniel Jones could be that guy. Kenny Golladay could be that guy. And Saquon could be that guy. They got a lot of guys here that could really step up and be some of the better players at their positions in the NFL. So the Vegas over-under is 7 wins. I would say this is more of a no bet. Just because it is the NFC East, there's a lot of volatility in this division. I don't know. I would take the under personally, but if I actually was going to truly put some money on it, I would say it's a no bet. So finally, overall statement. This team is loaded with offensive talent, except at the offensive line spot. I said before, we've seen this before with the Cleveland Browns. Baker did not look good that year. The entire team did not look very good that year. Morale was low. Everything was bad. We saw how bad it can get. However, they do not have Freddie Kitchens on the team. They have a much better head coach in Joe Judge. I think Jason Garrett is okay as their offensive coordinator. Although I do think that the season will still be disappointing by New York standards. I think they're really going to be looking to make a push for the NFC East this year. They're going to fail. Honestly, I think Daniel Jones could get moved on from. And I think that might be undeserved, because while people are saying there's no more excuses for Daniel Jones, the offensive line is not great. Andrew Thomas is a big question mark for me, and he's got to really step up this year along with Daniel Jones. So that is my analysis, my breakdown of the New York Giants. What do you guys think of this breakdown? Let me know in the comments below. Do I have the Giants too high or too low? If you like this video, once again, make sure to drop a like, as well as subscribing and turning on post notifications. Once again, just a reminder, this is video number 2 of the day, although from here on out, every single day you will see a video from me breaking down each NFL team as I give you my eventual power rankings. So thank you guys once again so much for watching. Be prepared for team number 24 tomorrow, and I will see you guys on the next one.